Most 9-to-5ers who attempt Airbnb businesses fail because they use a common but very risky strategy. But most of them don't know that there's another risk-free way to leave your job with Airbnb. And in this video, I'm going to show you how after using the risky strategy, I then bounced back from a £40,000 deficit by finding the risk-free strategy, which I built and automated to £129,000 that has allowed me to escape the corporate world and travel full-time. And just before you think this is bullshit, you can see this is my actual business, Pariah Living. I run Airbnbs remotely. These are all back in the UK. I'm currently in Dubai. I've been in Bali for the past 6 months traveling. This is a real business. It exists. It's a thing. You can go and look me up and fact check me on all this. So that's just a quick disclaimer. Don't like to just like flex numbers or anything like that, but that is what is occurring right now. You can go and fact check me on that. Now, disclaimer aside, I'm going to show you the two models now and talk a little bit about how I lost money with this one and how I've automated the systems of the other one and how you can use that yourself. So basically, model A is a model called rent to rent. And all that means is you rent a property from a landlord. Now, let's say you will use it for 2K. So I'm going to use numbers based on this, and you can just imagine how the flow of this goes, right? So you rent it for 2K. Now, this means you have more liability, meaning that rent is due no matter what every single month. Now, you do have more control, which is great because you can design the property, you can make it look exactly how you want, but you do have the risk of that rent and you do have that risk of the bills that are on top of that. Now, the idea with this model is that if you are doing a deal like this, you have checked your numbers and you can safely assume that you are going to make money on top of that, maybe a little bit more in the summer, a little bit less in the winter. Then what happens then is, let's say you collect £4,000 from Airbnb and Booking.com if you use other sites as well. Now what happens then is it comes in from these channels. You know, Airbnb and Booking.com are just some of the channels that I use in my business. Corporates are actually a huge part of how I work. They fill our properties with people from overseas, with people who are coming into the UK for work for months and months at a time, and they need short-term accommodation. So that's just another avenue that we can make sure that our properties are full 100% occupancy and really good revenue for the property itself. Now, moving down to this, right? Then you get the money, you make sure that the bills and Wi-Fi and everything else is paid for, the cleaning, all these things are your cost. Now, on top of that, you then have your profit, which is great. So that 4K, you spend 2K on the rent, 500 on the bills, and then you're left with 1,500 in your pocket. Great, if the numbers work out that way. Now, when I was doing this, I got very rushed into it, and I took on some deals that I shouldn't have, and it cost me a lot of money. I was in the hole for 15K because I spent money on a mentorship, and then I went on to invest more money into 2 more deals that I had to furnish, pay the first month's rent, pay the deposits, pay all the bills, get the property up to spec. And I was investing a lot of money into this. And this is an example of why you should not do this model, which is when you get your numbers wrong, which is what I did. And this beautiful little sequence of numbers that I've showed you here is not what mine was looking like. I was actually making less than the rent. So what was coming in from all the Airbnb and the channels that we were using was actually less than the 2K, let's say. And that meant I owed money every month. Not only was I not getting a surplus to make the money back on the staging and the rent and the deposit, I was losing more money each month. And that, my friend, was a very, very traumatizing few months for me. It was really awful. And I was stuck on these leases for 3 years because I'd committed myself to them. I was a little bit green around the ears, and I made my commitment based on the best case instead of stress testing those numbers on the worst case. And so you can have a pretty bad loss if if you're not making that money. You can lose. Like, you stand to lose money as well as gain money in this model. And so that is called, as I said, rent to rent. And this is kind of where it left me in a pretty bad spot, to be honest. I was a year into my business. I was now £40,000 in the hole. And I was like, I just started this business to travel. Why in the hell am I now down loads of money? But this was the turning point for me where I shifted into the second model, which is what I'm going to show you now, and explain how that one can be automated, scaled, and done so without any risk. Because as you've seen with this model, huge amounts of risk in this one, huge amounts of risk. And in the other one, I'm going to take you through now, you'll see there is not. So let's go over here to the other one, right? So Airbnb model B, risk-free for you as the Airbnb operator. In this one, we use the same property, right? The landlord is still there, they're in the picture, only now, instead of paying them rent, you just use your Airbnb knowledge to provide a service to them, right? So you're just a service provider in this one rather than an investor in the other one. And so in this case, you have less liability, meaning you don't have rent on your head. You don't have bills on your head. You don't have to pay for the cleaning costs. You don't have to pay for the maintenance costs. But one trade-off of that, right? There's trade-offs in everything in life. There's no free lunch. You have less control. The landlord has to pay for the furnishing. The landlord has to pay for the staging. And that can sometimes landlords like tell you that it's not necessarily, they don't want to design it to a certain spec or whatever, but you can then assure them that they know that, hey, look, this is worth your while. This is what other people are doing. This is what we can charge if we put a little bit of money into this. So there's ways around absolutely everything in this. But in this one, you have less liability, less control. That's the trade-off, right? So let's imagine you collect that 4K again. You get it through the different channels. They all come in. Now, in this scenario, the landlord pays for the Wi-Fi and pays for the bills. Now, you'll pay for that with the money that you've collected, right? And then you will just take a percentage of the revenue. So you pay the landlord all the money that you've collected, and you just take a smaller percentage of revenue for managing that property for the landlord, right? And the beautiful thing about this model is it is completely scalable in a risk-free way, because you don't lose anything if you get less than that 4K that we talked about a moment ago. You're just right where you are now. Now, that in and of itself removes all that risk that you had with the other model. Yes, you stand to earn a little bit less, but you can put your head on the pillow at night knowing that you are not going to be screwed over for lots of rent money and bills if you have gotten your numbers slightly wrong. And so it's not to say the other model doesn't work. It absolutely does work. And many, many people run that very successfully. It's a great business model. But if you're an inexperienced investor like I was at the time and you get it wrong, it can be a very traumatizing experience. And for someone like me and maybe someone like you, you probably just want to travel and replace your 9-to-5 income. And that's certainly what I got into Airbnb for. And so that's why this model is the one I wish I started out with when I began, because it would have given me exactly what I wanted, which is just location independence, freedom to actually go and travel while the business was systemized, while the cleaning and maintenance was all being taken care of, and all these triggers and automations were set up in place so that the people could check in, check out, have the property cleaned, have any maintenance handled with or without me wherever I was. And as I got further and further into this model, just partnering with landlords, I scaled Pareya Living to the size that it's at now, where I run it from anywhere in the world. We do these numbers that you've seen at the beginning of the video. And I've also gone on to start helping people to start this business themselves while they're in their 9-to-5, because all it really takes is 10, 15 hours a week, which is what I dedicated to it. So if you can dedicate 10 hours across your week, you can absolutely do this. Like, it can be ran by anyone. It's sort of just like here's the manual, here's the instructions, go meet landlords, go find landlords and bring them into these systems. So it's super, super scalable. It's the one I wish I started when I began this journey rather than starting with the other rent-to-rent model that left me in that position. Like I said, both of these models do work. It just depends where you're at, what your risk appetite is, what you're trying to do. If you're like me and you want to get location independence, you want to travel a little bit more, I would recommend the Airbnb management model. And if you want to have a look at the systems of the Airbnb management model in a little bit more detail, there's a video down below. You can go and click on that. And I break down like the systems part, because I mentioned systems once or twice now. You'll understand what it is that goes into that model itself and how you can run that. And if you ever have any questions about this, drop me a DM on Instagram. Hope you found some value in this and appreciate you watching.